Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply, and this video is to bring you a closer look at the Donjo number SMEST-103 in a 630 finish, a satin stainless steel strike plate. A look at what this strike is. So, by first glance, you can tell, well, it's a fairly unusual strike because it's so substantially extended in its lip length. Although, you know, you're going to bump into something like this sooner or later. Where I bump into these is large precast shell buildings. And the precast goes in, the frames are brought in, and they're attached directly to the precast. They're just bolted. And then they'll bring in some sort of drive-it or some sort of wall finish and bring that over the walls and then right back to the face of the frame. And if you've got a dimension that's, you know, an 8-inch precast or, you know, whatever thickness a precast is, and then you've got a 5 3/4 frame, but what's happened here is you know, whatever the condition is on the frame, then what they do is they'll bring their wall condition and finish up and over that. Well, what ends up happening is they're going to bring it flush basically to the rabbet of the frame. Well, as your door is closing, that latch is making contact with the face of the wall and dragging across that. So in a very actual circumstance, you need an extended lip strike just to keep that latch from digging into the wall. So this would be applied to the frame. You know, maybe you've modified that wall condition a little bit to suit the lip, but you'll see that in this instance where you've brought the wall back up to the face of the frame, or you have an unusually deep inset would be another situation. If you stand on the pull side of a door and a frame, and you run the frame itself, it's flush. It's probably inset ever so slightly, like maybe 3/32 of an inch or less. Well, imagine if that dimension was 2 inch, and it could be. You could have a 12-inch thick wall, a 12-inch deep wood frame, and they've taken that door and centered it in the opening. No problem. You see that. And you know where I see it often is in old structures that are 100+ years old. And, you know, if you have a 3-story home in Florida built in the late 19th century or thereabouts, there's no steel. There's really thick first floor walls to carry the weight of everything above it. The state capitol, the original state capitol building in Iowa has outrageously thick walls, and they've got these beautiful doors with exceptional wide throw hinges. 16, 18, 20-inch thick walls. Those doors are in the center of those openings. So that's the concept where you'd need an extended lip. These happen to be pairs of doors, so the strike would just be standard, but those wide throw hinges were 20-inch wide is what they were. 20-inch wide throw hinge. You take that hinge and lay it open in front of you, and that's what they were about. So really outrageously awesome to see that. State Capitol building of Texas. They've got some really cool wide throw hinges that are there. So anyway, back to this strike. Why would you order it? Well, you have a condition that's not unlike what I've described. It's 4 7/8 tall. That means it's perfect for a hollow metal frame, or at least one that's been prepped for a 4 7/8 strike. It's 1.25 inches up here. Its overall width is about 3 9/16 or so. That's not how we measure strikes. Strikes are measured from the center line of the screw hole to the edge of the lip. And this is a 103. This is a 3-inch extended lip. Okay, that logic doesn't fall through the rest of the line, but it does on this strike. About 3 3/8 tall, and that's typical and common. This is 630 finish, and that means a couple of things. It's made of stainless steel, and that it is in a brushed stainless finish. That film that you see there is just the peel-away protective film. I'm going to guess that they have laser cut this. It's a guess. I've never been to Danjo. I don't see how they make. I've never seen how they make these, but I'm thinking it's laser cut or water cut. It could be water cut, water jet cut. Couple of holes. What are you using that for? A mortise lock, obviously. Mortise lock with a deadbolt, in fact, most likely. And if you don't have a deadbolt, where you're getting this strike anyway. That's off center on each of those holes because holes in strike plates for mortise locks are off center. Inch and a half. Inch and a half, 3/4, 3/4. Center line of those screw holes, that's going to be a standard, about 4 1/4 inch. Speaking of those screw holes, screws are included. This is what's called a combination screw. I remember the first time I saw this and asked my dad, what in the world's wrong with this screw? It's defective. He says, no, it's not defective. And he explained to me it's a combination that will work, believe it or not, that will work in either a wood frame or a hollow metal frame or a frame that's been drilled and tapped with a 1224 thread, and that head on there is what's called a flat undercut head. Flat undercut head screws are used when you are attempting to attach a piece of hardware with a flathead screw where the wall thickness is very thin, so it's flat head but then undercut so that you can get that screw brought all the way down and flush to the frame like in a hollow metal frame that's 16 gauge. Or actually, in a hollow metal frame where you're attaching this thickness is what the problem is. A true countersunk screw, you'd never get it all the way down and flush with the face of the strike. There is a link below this video to a document called Template that will give you all of the dimensional properties. They say that the item is 90 thousandths thick or 16 gauge. My instrument of truth will soon verify that. My caliper is telling me 0.09. 0.09 on the money, not 0.91. That's pretty accurate. One thing that I don't like, and one thing I would suggest that Danjo does to change the design, is that they need to change the bias of the location, maybe not bias, the backside of the location of the two holes, even though they can't, because it would change it into a handed strike. The 0.26 dimension from the outside here to here, if you have a lock and a deadbolt preparation, you do not want the deadbolt and the lock having the same center line. Because in actuality what happens in a door, when you push the door closed, it will latch and it will relax a little bit. The door will actually relax a little bit. When you put that deadbolt in the same location to throw that, you either have to make these holes abnormally or larger than necessary, or you off-center the deadbolt. Why is it relaxing? There's weather stripping pushing on the door. So I push the door closed and I latch it, and then incrementally, imperceptibly, it just moves back out. High-end manufacturers of locks will manufacture their strikes that way. The downside, obviously, of doing that is now this has just become a handed strike. Okay? Anyway, doesn't really matter. You or I don't care about it at that level, nor should we. Or maybe we should. It's just hollow metal doors and frames. Now, there is also below this below this video, a link to the product catalog, which is going to allow you to review all things strike-related from Danjo. Definitely worth tooling around in there because you will find the smaller version of this, the 102, the bigger version, the 104, and then you'll find variations on it as well. A 1.5, a 2.5, an inch and 5/8, an inch and 3/4. So you want to be able to take advantage of getting the right part number for what you're doing. Okay. The rest of that catalog is awfully handy because it will show you all things strike related, not only extended lip, 2 1/4 D strikes, 2 3/4 T strikes, 4 7/8 strikes, ANSI strikes, security strikes for residential applications, standard strikes as well. The ability for them to manufacture a custom strike. There is a template at the very end where you can have them make you any strike that you can draw. I will caution you that it's expensive when the quantities are small and not so bad when there's a couple hundred involved. Finally, there's a link below this video to the manufacturer's page where you can pull up not only all of the Danjo products that we sell, but a link to the manufacturer's website, as well as a link to the full product catalog. Any questions on the Donjo, their part number, SMEST-103 in a 630 finish, or any other Donjo product, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you.